Good morning everybody, unless of course you're watching this video in the evening, then that is good evening. You're watching Time Travel TV and welcome to the year, 1969. Now you may have watched on the news lately that there's been a lot of talk about the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. So I thought today I will do an episode all about the space race. So, first things first, what is the space race? Well, it's simple. It's a race between the Americans and the Russians to stick as much stuff into space as possible. Simple. So what was the first country to put something into space? Well, was it the Americans? Or was it the Russians? Well, it turns out it was neither. It was the Nazis! Ha! Those Nazis get everywhere, don't they? Late in World War II, Wernher von Braun's V2 rocket was the first launch. Although it wasn't so much a spaceship as such, it was more of a missile aimed at London. In fact, his autobiography was, "We reached for the stars, but sometimes hit London instead." Wernher von Braun did have bigger ideas, though, of space exploration. But after the war, Wernher von Braun went and worked for the Americans, and other Nazi scientists went and worked for the Russians to help their space program. So, the first country to make a move, well, it was the Russians. The Russians, to put Sputnik 1 into space, the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth in 1957, although 4 months later, the Americans put Explorer 1 into space, their first artificial satellite to enter orbit. But then, in 1961, the Russians were back. Quick hat changes. In 1961, the Russians are back by putting the first man into orbit, the first cosmonaut or space sailor, Yuri Gagarin. Although 3 weeks later, the Americans put their first astronaut into space, Alan Shepard. Although Alan Shepard didn't actually orbit the Earth, he just went up there and came back again. By this time, the Americans were feeling that they were lagging behind in the space race a bit, so they JFK, or John F. Kennedy I should really rather say, the president, said that we are going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And that sounded absolutely nothing like JFK, but you get the idea. So they started picking up their game a bit. In 1962 they put the first American into orbit, John Glenn, although in 1963 the Russians put the first woman into space. Coincidentally, she is still alive and has volunteered for a one-way trip to Mars. Then in 1965, more gains were made by the Soviet Union to win the space race. What they did was they did the first spacewalk, lasting 12 minutes and 9 seconds. But then the Americans did not quite the first spacewalk in 1965. Then in 1966 the Americans started pulling their game together, and they did the first docking of two spaceships in orbit, and also in 1966 Star Trek was released. And coincidentally that's got absolutely nothing to do with the space race. I thought I should throw it in there because I think it's really important. Then in 1968 the Americans launched Apollo 8, which was their spaceship that would orbit the moon. And they didn't actually touch down on the moon, they just went round the moon a bit. This was done for two reasons. First of all, to test out the kit they had. Second of all, it was to look for a possible landing site to land on the moon. And the next year, they did. Apollo 11, the Saturn V rocket, which was coincidentally designed by Wernher von Braun, designer of the V2. And hang on, yes, July 1969, here we go! There we go, I'll get rid of that hat. Okay, there we go, here we go. Blast off! Look, up it goes up into space, up. Oh, it's going pretty fast. Yeah, it's really small. Up, it's gone. Yeah, that went faster than I imagined. The astronauts on board were Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins. Michael Collins didn't actually go in the moon module, he was in the command module, orbiting the moon. Anyway, they landed on the moon eventually, and they put on their space gear. This is not a space helmet, although coincidentally they did wear such things very similar to these underneath their space helmets. In fact, Buzz Aldrin had gained quite a bit of stubble on the voyage, and because it took several days. And he found it very irritating, quite itchy. Problem is you can't just lift off your space helmet, have an itch, and then put it back down again, because, well, it doesn't quite work like that. Anyway, not only that, when they were putting their space suits on in the module, while moving around, they broke a circuit breaker. Unfortunately, it was a very important circuit breaker. It was the one that was responsible for the rocket boosters sending them back to Earth. They did find a very low-tech method to fix it. They shoved a felt-tip pen in it. Very, very clever, that. Very good use of felt-tip pens. Anyway, the first thing they did when they opened the lunar module was not step down and say one small step for man. They threw all their rubbish out the door in a jettison bag, which is basically a white bag with all their rubbish in. They had accumulated quite a bit over that time. Then Neil Armstrong stepped down the ladder. Now, Buzz Aldrin had hoped to be the first out of the module, except he couldn't be, for the main reason that Neil Armstrong was in the way. Problem was that Neil Armstrong was sitting in the command seat, and therefore he had to get out first to let Buzz out. Anyway, he stepped on the moon and said, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," and that sounded more Australian than American. I sound even less like Neil Armstrong when I sound like JFK. Anyway, they then did what all Americans do on a holiday. They planted a flag, they stole some moon rocks. This isn't a moon rock, you've got to pretend. They took some pictures, snap, and they phoned the president. Hang on. They always make this look so easy on films. Oh, hi, Mr. Nixon. He's not in the mood for speaking right now. Anyway, after a little time, they came back. They were welcomed back as heroes, and I can finally take this damn thing off. I don't know how they went. In total, they weren't the last people to land on the moon, though. In total, 12 people have walked on the moon. There has also been various unmanned missions lately. For instance, one Israeli mission this year. There are also very many unmanned missions planned. For instance, there was one in 2026 planned by North Korea. Unfortunately, my time travel's permit only allows me to go back in time rather than forward in time, so we're going to have to wait and see. But never mind, that's all we have time for. That's a space race. And remember, space, the final frontier.